everyone. My name is Jesse Chason with Lisa Blanchard as the host of Airing Addiction.
I share often my journey started on this campus. Got sober as a client here, just like you.
I really do see phenomenal change.
Always hope. I've seen situations that on the surface look impossible, become possible.
Doing this podcast is to share those recovery stories, be honest about what the challenges are and have some real conversations, but kind of share that out on the airwaves.
Welcome to this episode of Airing Addiction. I'm Lisa Blanchard, and I am flying solo today. So Jesse Chason is not with us today. It's July. It's a really busy month. Sometimes it's super hard to get us all together. We wanted to make sure that we brought you all a fantastic recovery story and an episode in July. So here we are. And so with that, I really want to wish you all a fantastic summer. I hope everybody's enjoyed kind of some sunshine, depending on where you are. Sometimes it's super hot, sometimes it's super rainy and stormy, but hopefully you're taking some time to take a minute to enjoy yourselves and slow down a little bit this summer. But I really want to introduce our guest today that I'm really excited to have on. Keriann Caccavaro is a woman in recovery, a community advocate and a recovery coach. She owns and operates LIV Recovery Homes, which provides sober living for women in Lowell, Massachusetts, and has a recovery coach and a community advocate for many years. She's worked in peer recovery and in peer-based work, and she really is focused on supporting individuals with substance use and homelessness and drawing off of her lived experience to support folks. And so these are my favorite kind of stories. So welcome, Keriann. Thanks so much for joining us today, even kind of last minute. I just love that you were like, sure, Friday sounds like a great time to do a podcast. So I'd love to just have you start us off with sharing as much of your story as you'd like and how that led you into kind of the recovery field, helping others.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really grateful to be asked to come on and share my story. It's always like sort of trippy in a little way, like when I'm asked to come on and just speak about, my active use and homelessness and my lived experience. Because like during that time frame, I never would have thought that it would have became a story that I can use to help others with. Like in complete like despair, like my life was in shambles, and to be able to like kind of walk through it and show like that recovery is possible, regardless of like what the depths of your substance use, where that has brought you, that there is hope. It's really a blessing to me. So with that, like, I'm really grateful that even with it being last minute, that you called and asked me to be a part of this. So thank you. Yeah, so I'm a woman in recovery. I have a little over 9 years sober. Thank you. I was an IV heroin user. At 30 years old, I was homeless. I had open cases. I had, traveled throughout the state to different CSS and TSS and recovery homes and behavioral modification homes. And the problem was me. It wasn't, the people or the places or the locations. It was me, and wherever I went, I brought myself. But like prior to that, I came from a really good home. I came from a home that, like, with 2 working parents, again, it was me. I liked trouble. I liked to get in trouble. I had ADD. I moved around a lot. I was hyper. I was super talkative. And I learned really quick at a young age that, like, the fastest way for me to get any type of attention was like negative attention. It was much easier for me just to like act out, go against the grain to get what I was initially looking for. I didn't realize that was going to become like a life behavior that like would take me a really long time to kind of unlearn and grow out. But like what started off as like ADHD, I think at that time was also like, it became it was an insecurity that I had. I always felt really different from like the rest of the kids. I couldn't really like sit in class and retain the information. So I thought that there was like something wrong with me. I thought that like, I didn't realize that I just learned differently. So instead of like really trying to apply myself, I just didn't try at all. And I found a group of kids that were like me, that also didn't try at all. And we were kind of like our own little family. But like, I also grew up in a time frame where like we knew about like crack. We knew about like the DARE program. There were programs set in place, but I think on a preventative measure, like the intent behind those programs were to prevent us from traveling down this road, but we weren't really receiving like, how do you end up there? Like how do I not end up there? And so like in my household, it was like, oh my God, if you do drugs, you die. And I'm like, what's in between that though? Like, I want to find out what's in between, doing drugs and dying. And, but I didn't have, like, I had no experience in my household with active addiction or substance use or anything like that. So it was really intriguing to me. And so around like the typical age, 12, 13, I started drinking. I liked the confidence that I had in drinking. And I didn't like the next day, the regret. So I just drank some more. And, eventually like that turned into really unhealthy coping mechanisms, really unhealthy. Like I would like disassociate, I would detach, and I would drink. And I started getting arrested really early. I started getting arrested at like 15, 16 years old, because like what I learned early on was, it's easier just to act out and not really communicate. So like now in my teens, I don't know how to communicate at all. And so I'm going to use like aggressive behaviors to get my point across. And like fear was driving the show. Fear, insecurities, low self-esteem, like all of that was like really what was driving, my bus. And I think it was like around 16 or 17, I started taking different pills, not like regularly. It was very sporadically, but I would drink a lot. Like I would skip school and I would drink. And then, before I knew it, I was 19 years old, about to have a procedure. And I got prescribed Percocets. And that was like my first introduction with like any opiates. And I thought like it was like the cure for everything. I was prescribed it from a doctor. Typical story. Like, I didn't think I would become addicted. I didn't know anybody that was really addicted to Percocets or opiates. And so this was like early 2004, 2003, 2004. So right in it with like the OC era. And by the end of the week, I had already tried my first Oxy. And, the craziest part about it was like, it was a perfect storm. Like I knew that I was like entering an arena that like was going to change me for the rest of my life. And I was still willing to enter that arena. Like I didn't really care. At this point, I'd been in abusive relationships. That's a part of my story, is like domestic abuse. And so, my own self-worth like really played a part in this. And what started off as a Percocet like ended up with IV heroin use at 30 years old. I spent my 20s in and out of programs, going to detoxes, and not for the right reasons, I would say. I think a lot of the times, like I went to detox to appease my mother, to shut my probation officer off, so I had a place to live. Like, it was never with the intention of me actually getting sober. And like, that's when I would like really start seeing a lot of people passing away. And then in like 2000, I think it was like 2008, 2009, they got rid of the OCs. And that's when I tried heroin. And I remember like having a conversation with like one of the people that I was hanging out with. And they were like, this is going to change you for the rest of your life. Like, don't bother doing it. But like, I was already so involved and like in the grips of my addiction that like I didn't care. And I didn't care. I hadn't cared. And if I really like take a look at that, I hadn't really cared at 16 either. Like I really didn't know what to care about. I didn't know like what like I should really be doing with my life. I had like really no purpose. And so, you know, my drugs were my purpose. I woke up every single day just trying to get my next high. And like at the end of it, you know, I ended up stealing from all of my family members, stealing $70,000 worth of my mother's jewelry with my ex to feed my habit. And I would love to say that like during that time I had guilt and I felt bad and like I didn't. Like I was like on pure survival autopilot. It wasn't until like years later where like my brain was starting to clear that I was like, oh my God, like look at the impact that like my actions have caused my family. Like, and you know, for me, like all the attempts that I had with sobriety and recovery, I was so fearful of getting to know like who I was. I was so fearful of like understanding like me and like taking a look at my own shortcomings and taking a look at the things that like I was really insecure about and being okay with myself. It wasn't any outside issue. It was always about how I felt about myself and wanted to be a part of and liked and pretty and blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't until like, you know, in my 30s where, you know, I was at 30 years old, I was either going to do 5 years in Framingham State Prison, or I was given the opportunity to go into drug court, and take a chance at maybe changing my life, you know. And I remember sitting in Framingham and being like, I'm just going to take drug court. I'm going to take drug court and go to a program, so that I can get out of jail, so I can smoke a cigarette, so I can eat some food. And then I'm going to run. I'm not going to stay in that program. My probation officer can find me. I had no intention whatsoever of staying in this halfway house, having a better life that I wanted to live. And like, you know, I believe that was like divine intervention for me. I was placed in a halfway house in Lynn with like 30 other females. And I was like, oh God, this is like terrible. And, you know, I remember like every day, like being like, okay, you know what, maybe today is like something will present itself that I'll find the desire to leave today. Like I wasn't really, I hadn't been on this like recovery thing and this halfway house thing. So I'm like, you know what, maybe tomorrow, it's raining today, maybe tomorrow I'll run. And, you know, before I knew it, it was like 3 months I was in the house. I was able to get a job. You know, I was given like leadership roles in the house. When I would go to drug court every week, like I would watch my peers either get applauded because they were doing a really great job, or I would see like what happens when they weren't doing a great job. And I'm like, I don't really want to go in there and like get yelled at by the judge. Like I'm not really in for that today. Like I think maybe I'll stick it out. And it felt better to get praised by like the judge and my drug court team. It felt really good than to like do what I always did and disappoint everybody. And, you know, today, like I graduated that drug court. It was like one of the proudest moments for me. Like I didn't really graduate anything. I had really no certificates in my life. So I'm like, oh my God, I graduated something that nobody really graduates. I graduated that halfway house. And this was in 2013, 2014. And like, that was when like things really started to change. Like 2013 is when we saw like really high numbers of overdoses. And, you know, at that time, like there really wasn't a lot of like groups put together, like these like grassroots nonprofits, like popping up everywhere. And in my community, you know, there was like a select few that were really like speaking loud about their lived experience. And my drug court actually asked me to go with the district attorney, Marion Ryan, and on like her opioid task force to like different hospitals to inform doctors and surgeons and nurses, like what it's like who we are. Like when we come in on an overdose, when we come in and we're actively using, like we're still a human. And that I remember sitting like on the panel being like, I have open cases and the district attorney's asking me to talk about my drug addiction, like in a way to teach others. Like it was, who would have thought? And that's when like really things changed for me. Like I realized, you know what, like I wasn't put on this earth and I didn't travel this life for nothing. Like I went through what I went through for a reason, and I'm going to share about it. I'm going to share the good. I'm going to share the bad. I'm going to share like the really gross, ugly moments of like being a homeless drug addict in Boston. And like, maybe it will help somebody. And I've kind of been on that since. Like I've been working in the field since 2015. And, you know, I started off working like at ATS and, you know, then like a halfway house, a young woman's halfway house. And then as a case manager, and each one I'm like, I'm not really sure this is for me until I like really found, you know, the peer sector. And, you know, like allowing somebody to create their pathway was like, I'm like, that's incredible. And so today, like that's, you know, I had the opportunity in 2020 to open up a peer recovery center in the midst of COVID, and watching my community be able to like step out and tap into like the creative side that they are not really used to, and like how we can support people with being so disconnected. It was like one of the most beautiful experiences I've had. And so like I speak on like peer recovery and multiple pathways, and allowing people to have the ability to choose what they want to do in their recovery, obviously along the lines, but also reminding people that their worth isn't based off of their length of sobriety. Like it doesn't really matter if you're an hour sober or if you're 40 years sober. Your life still matters. And we should still support you regardless of where you are in your sobriety. And so, you know, I've gotten to see a lot of amazing people see that they're amazing, because I could see that they were amazing, even in the grips of their substance use, but it was really difficult for them to see that. And on their own, they got to discover like their real beauty, and that like they belong. And so, you know, that's really, now I have a sober house in Lowell for women, which that has taught me a lot, to be honest with you. Us women are not easy. And so like, I'm very grateful, but it's challenging. We're not the cookie cutter, you know. For every female that I have in the house, we have to attach a lot of supports and services to one female to make sure that she is receiving the best support possible that we can kind of guide her to receive. So yeah, it's been, you know, the last 9 years, it's been incredible, to say the least.
I loved so much about your story. I loved the honesty. I love the way that you just describe it. But a couple of things really stood out to me. You know, as you were younger and on your active addiction, you know, one of the things that you said is that what you said it was the same when you were 16 as when you were in your 20s, as when you started using, you know, IV heroin in your 30s, is that you didn't care because you didn't know what to care about. Right? There was no purpose there. And it just strikes me that your recovery has been really rooted in purpose, right? There's so much purpose. Like you now know what to care about. Yes. Right? Like, and that is like not knowing what to care about and not having purpose sometimes fuels addiction. And having purpose and knowing what to care about, which could be different for everybody. Not everybody needs to go open their own server homes and do that, right? But they have to find something for them, right? Their own pathway. Like what do they care about? What gives your life purpose? Can you talk a little bit more about how that fuels your recovery now?
Absolutely. Like, I think, like idle hands is a devil's workshop, whatever that statement is. And it's like, I think even if I look back, very young, like, 10 years old, I would see other kids like be very focused on like making sure their homework was done, paying attention to the teacher, making sure their projects were done to the best. I didn't have that. Like, I didn't have that when I was in high school. I wasn't like focused on making sure I had good grades so that I could go into a good college, so that I could have a great career. Didn't have that. Like, it was scattered. It was all over the place, which then I think at that point, that's where it was like the negative energies and the negative situations were able to kind of seep in, because I was looking to be a part of something anywhere. It didn't matter where. And I had a whole group of people that were also looking to be a part of. And we can see that in not just like my experience, but if you look in society, if you look in other cities and other demographics, there's younger kids that are looking to be a part of. And what does that look like? And if we don't have environments, positive environments that allow children, young teens to explore, like what do you want to do? Where do you want to be a part of? We end up forcing ourselves into groups or energies or environments that may not necessarily be conducive to our life and to our growth and to us as a human. And so I think now today, like I was recently speaking to somebody about, future endeavors and like, what does that look like? And like talking about how we need to have spaces where we're not just providing services. It's not service. Like let's hold space. That might take a little while. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but like, let's hold space. And you want to start a motorcycle club and that's going to keep you sober. Let's figure out a way to start a motorcycle club with a group of people that are standing up for a cause, helping each other, picking each other up. It doesn't have to have anything to do with substance use. It's really finding people that you feel a part of and you feel like you belong. And I think, I don't know if it was ingrained in me. I don't know if like that I have the gene that is hereditary. I have no idea, but I know that I'm a human and that I want to be a part of and I want to feel connected to other people. And when I don't feel connected, I will make sure I'm a part of a group, whether it's going to be helpful for me or not. So I do think that's probably why I like the peer sector and like recovery coaching and, accepting people where they're at. Because I very much in my own life experience, I needed around people that accepted me for where I was at and allowed me to explore to see what do I really want to be a part of.
Right. And one of the themes we keep hearing, and especially I think COVID, you mentioned trying to be creative during COVID and how amazing that was, because we knew before, but I don't think anything reinforced it more than what we all just collectively went through, is that recovery thrives in connection, right? And addiction thrives in isolation. And everybody does have that innate need. And one of the other things that struck me that you, shared your, I don't know if you have a formal diagnosis or not, but your ADD. And it really just struck me that, when somebody has attention deficit, it's not that there's something wrong with them, is that their brains are wired differently. And literally your brain is wired to not want to focus on things you don't care about. It's literally wired that way. Right.
Yes.
And it's also, one of the things that I tell, folks with ADD and ADHD, right? And my daughter being one of them, is that it can create its challenges when what you're focusing on is not what everybody else collectively is or what others want you to. But when you find something that you do want to focus on, it is a legitimate superpower. Like I bet you, and you put your mind to something, it's done, right?
Yes. And that's sort of difficult part about it. Like, I can't blame anybody for it. Like, I came in from a time where like that diagnosis was just coming out. Like, you know, I was an 80s kid. I was an early 90s kid. So like having to be secluded in a room all by myself to take a test so I wouldn't be paying attention to the girls' sneakers or the tapping of the pens. Like, cool. Like, that was a great attempt. But like, you also put me in a room all by myself with a test. I'm counting the dots on the, I'm looking at everything but that test. Like, you should probably have me in a room with a few other people. But I think also at that time, it was something was wrong with us. And there wasn't anything wrong with us. My mom used to say, stop trying to fit a square peg in a, whatever that's saying. It's like a round hole. Thank you. Yeah. And that's really what it was. I just learned differently. Like, what I've learned about myself since I've gotten into sobriety is I'm like obsessive compulsive at times with the things that I want to learn. Like, I will dissect and I will learn and I will learn and I'll learn every single thing, and then I'll master it, and then I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore, and then I move on to the next. But I also have learned that I've learned even in my work experience, I have to have creative freedom. If I do not have creative freedom, I am restricted and I will not be able to excel. I don't think I had teachers at the time that could really sit down and evaluate me to understand that about me. But if you gave me a project that, you know, really intrigued me, I probably did the best that I could do. And I think that's with most people. I think, I've seen the most creative people have ADHD. ADHD, like, we were made like this for a reason. And, you know, it's unconventional a lot of the times, but we weren't made to be conventional. We were made to be different. And like, I love it. So I agree with you totally.
Yeah. In such a light. And one of the other things that you said, which it really comes through when you talk about it, and I think is a good reflection of kind of how you didn't feel amazing for most of your life, but now you're able to really see how amazing other people are, even when they can't see it, just like you couldn't see it. And really, you know, encourage them to develop that themselves with their own pathway. And I love the multiple pathways. You know, we run multiple peer recovery support centers, and that's really important to us as well. And so now I want to ask you now, like, now do you see yourself as amazing?
Yes, I do, but I also try not allowing that to hold too much of my focus. Like, I think when I'm like really eye-centered a lot of the times, I'm super critical of myself. And that is in all areas. That could be work, that could be relationships, in all areas. And so, what I can see within myself is like, I know I try my hardest in like everything that I do, which is very amazing. Like, you will never get a half of Kerry. You will never. And I know for me that like, I try to leave people feeling better once they leave me, like feeling better about themselves. Like, I constantly am trying to like, how would I want to be treated? How would I want to feel? Like, how would I want somebody to respond? And like, so those aspects of me are really amazing. I can tell you, listen, I was an IV heroin user and I was homeless. So there are sides of me that can get real crazy real quick. And so that's not my amazing side, but I'm very true about it. So I take me as I am, and I do my best.
And that acceptance of people where they're at every point, right? You kind of have to do the same thing with yourself.
Yes.
Right? Instead of getting to that hypercritical space, you have to kind of get to a space where you're accepting yourself as you are in this moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, you know, and I think a lot of the times, like for a lot of people in recovery, not just speaking about myself, but we end up like taking on this, like, I have to be perfect. I have to respond perfect. I have to be perfect. And it's like, you can't learn if you're trying to be perfect all the time. Like, we're going to mess up. We're going to fall short. Like, we're going to respond to things that maybe, like, looking back or looking at it afterwards, you could have done different, like you could have done it better, you could have done it differently, or maybe you shouldn't have said those certain things. But it's like, we're humans, most emotional people, most of us are emotional people, and we're learning. So it's like, okay, next time I'll do better. Now that I know better, I will do better. So it's kind of like cutting myself and others a little bit of slack.
Yeah. And I'm sure that comes in really handy running sober homes for women, right? And one of the things that struck me when you talk often about kind of, women-focused treatment and female-focused treatment is there's often, you reference some things in your own past that probably resonate with you, there's often a lot of trauma and a lot of trauma history that either predates the addiction and or is during the addiction or reinforced it, and kind of an ongoing cycle of trauma that really can reinforce that addiction cycle. And it also, some of those things, you don't just unlearn those right away, right? The way that you're going to respond to somebody else, the way that you're going to respond to a situation, but understanding where that's coming from is what you really need to do in order to support yourself, give yourself some grace, and maybe respond differently next time. Do you see a lot of that in the work that you do now?
Yes, absolutely. Like, I think, like most of us, when we come in, we think our only problem is drugs or alcohol. That's it. I don't need to fix anything else. I just need to stop doing drugs and I need to stop doing alcohol, drinking alcohol. And it's like, okay, you can try that. And then you'll see that, like, without working on any of the other behaviors or traits or whatever, without working through what led you to this point, you're going to be left with nothing but drugs and alcohol again. That will be your only solution. Most of us, that was our solution. It wasn't like, oh, let me just do this for fun. It was our solution to our mind, to our trauma, to our inability to really process situations or the past, our fears. And so it's funny, like, watching, women come into the house and, they're very new and they're robotic. I got a sponsor. I did 12 steps. I'm doing this. And we're not robotic. And it doesn't matter if you have 6 months or however long, like, we're always going to be learning. And it's almost like the second you think, okay, I can put that back on the shelf, I'm good. The second you walk away from the shelf, something else pops up. We're always working through our areas, like in our shelves. We're always working through it. So it's like with the women, what I always try to say, like, I had a woman a few weeks ago that she was like slamming cabinets, and it was like really irking me. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, why is this really? And then, like, I had to remove myself from our situation. I realized, like, that puts me on edge. Like, when I hear cabinet slamming and stomping and really loud breathing, you're giving me cues that something is not okay, which puts me on edge. So, like, right away, I need to go, are you okay? It has nothing. I don't need to go, you're triggering me right now. I need to ask her if she's okay. Are you okay? What's going on? Like, you're walking hard, you're slamming. And then once she feels comfortable and shares, or she might not even realize she's doing that. That could be a behavior that she's been doing it for so long, she has no clue. But now you're in community living. So we have to be aware of our surroundings and realize that we all could be triggering people. But I want to bring it to your attention. So now that you know, let's try working on that. Like, and that's all through doing my work. Like, I have to know what, like, gets me being like, oh my God, I have to know that. But I really, I watch people. I watch how, like, what is not being said, probably a survival skill. I watch body language, and I try to really understand what is underneath what you're presenting. And that's because I would always say the best, and I would say exactly what everybody wanted to hear. And there was so much going on underneath that nobody recognized. So at, like, our house, we have a thing in our house where I'm like, oh, you're on my radar, because I can see, like, something's not right. And And like the girls know, like that's not a bad thing. It's like, let's unpack a little bit. Let's like see what's really going on. You're not here just to sleep. You're here to get your life. You're here to change your life. You're here to learn how to live. So, you know, but with 13 females, it's 13 different radars at all times.
Yeah, and they're there to live, not survive, right?
Exactly,
And that's
exactly.
a big difference. But I think it also probably the way you describe that by, you know, when you're hearing the cabinet doors and you're starting to have a reaction, right? That automatically creates a narrative for you. So you're telling a story to yourself about what's happening.
Yes.
And by you just going and being calm and open with her and saying, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Then that can actually remove that story for you.
Yes.
Right? So that it's less of an impact on yourself and you're supporting
Yes.
her kind of at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I 100% believe that we are our solution a lot of the times. Like we can choose, and could be somewhat controversial, and I get it. Like I've had to work through trauma, but I give that power. I choose to give that power. If I'm choosing not to receive like the suggestions of my therapist or, you know, my providers that are giving me solutions, but I'm choosing to allow that trauma, that fear, those memories to like play over and over and over again, I can't expect a different result because I'm not willing to let go of it. And so it's like really, it's not really trying to find a solution. It's really trying to find an environment that like really allows you to hear. You don't have to hold that anymore. Like you don't have to have that play. It's already happened. It's already happened. And it's now just holding you hostage. Like let's let it go a little bit, just a little bit. And I think realizing that it's okay to let it go is like really, there's comfort in that's really scary, but there's also some comfort that's like, wait a minute. I'm holding this, like I'm allowing it to control my life. And so with any behavior or memory, anything, like I always try to provide a space where it's like, let's like loosen this a little bit. Like, let's let it go just a little bit. Cause I have traumas, you know, especially with domestic abuse, there's situations that like, I don't even know where they come from. It's like a response. And all of a sudden I shut down. I don't want to talk. I'm a shell. And I'm allowing that to happen because I should say, please, that's like really triggering me. Can you not do that? Can we actually sit down and talk about A, B, and C? You know, I had no idea that I'd have to do that when I stopped doing drugs. No clue. I had no clue I had to learn how to communicate when I stopped doing drugs. I thought I just had to stop doing drugs. No, it was a lot more.
Yeah, it just speaks to all of that work. And it speaks to, I love how you describe, and anybody who works in peer recovery centers does such a great job at this, kind of the multiple pathways. And there's pieces of everybody's pathway that works on their own things they need to work on, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just abstinence, it's all the other things that you need to work on. We've got a little bit more time. I'd love to, if you're willing to share, to hear kind of what is your pathway now? What do you do to actively work on your own recovery now? How do you take care of yourself?
So in the early beginning, I was like very much, abstinence based, 12-step sponsor. And then probably about like 3 years in, I was like, I need a lot more than what a sponsor can offer me. Cause I'm like dumping everything on the sponsor, like, here, you can have it all. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. Therapy for me is huge. Just because of my own stuff, like a lot of the times I need to be in like a safe space that with a provider that can give me like clinical support, that can offer me like what, and has a wider lens. I need a wider lens. I can't have everything go right back to substance use. Like we need to really look at this. And so that's like my pathway. And then at 5 years, I got really sick. mentally sick in a way where, you know, working in the field, my ego allowed me to attach myself in like my own disease, and that I also have to continuously work on evolving in my sobriety, that I got to a place where like, you know, I had sobriety, but like I was borderline suicidal, and it was all based off of focusing more on helping others for the looks of it, if that makes sense. And what I realized was that I was avoiding working on myself. And so I took time off of work, and I always laugh when I say this, but like I like went into the woods and like I started like hiking. My husband was like, "Are you okay here?" Like, I'm going in the woods every day. He's like, "Do you go to the hospital?" But like, what it really, if you really look at that in a bigger picture, like I really needed to find myself. I needed to be away from people. I needed to be away from like pleasing people. And I needed to really listen to myself and get to know like me, my thoughts, where are these coming from? And so that's like still my number one. Like when I'm psycho, I'm like, I gotta go in the woods. I gotta go. I need no people, no carry this. I got to get away from everything. And then creativity. For me, like I need to stay creative. So I constantly am like working on a project. I know for me, that's my pathway. I have to have like the creative side of my brain working when I'm not well, because it allows me to work through whatever issues I have. So I'm a huge supporter of multiple pathways, and that yes, 12-step works. I'm advocate of 12-step, but there's other options too. You can take some from each one.
I love that. And I love, you know, sometimes I think, but often early in recovery, which sounds like it was kind of a little bit of your story, you know, I think it's wonderful, right? It's my purpose in life, right? To support individuals with substance use disorder. So there is nothing wrong with that being your purpose. But sometimes I think in recovery, I see some folks that put all, and like to use such a terrible term, but all their eggs in that basket, like that's their only that's what's building their recovery. And I love the way that you just described, you are doing all of those things. It gives you so much purpose and gives so much back to you. But then you're taking care of yourself, right? You're taking that wider lens, you're going to therapy. I love that you're going into the woods and doing some of that work, right? There's like legit evidence on that stuff. Like
there is.
Something intuitively told you to do that maybe, but like it worked, right? And that creativity, right? So it really speaks to how big a pathway should be. It's not a small path. It's like a big path with lots of lanes. Right?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I love that. Yes. And like, I think, you know, in my time, like when I first got clean and sober, like it was, you either go to AA or NA, like there wasn't really a lot else. And like, I am like, guys, you guys have so many options now. Like there was not all of these options. And, let's allow people to have those options. Like my disease is not cookie cutter. I'm not like this. I'm not like one size. Like my disease evolves as I evolve. So that changes. So my recovery has to also change with it. And like, I take what I can and I leave the rest. And always staying open to learn something new.
That's fantastic. So I know we're coming up on 45 minutes, although I feel like we could talk all day. And so we'll probably have to have you back on some point, maybe in Recovery Month. Because I love the idea of doing a peer recovery panel, right? Because I think it supports that multiple pathway conversation. Everybody's approach to peer recovery can be different too. So I'd love to have you back. This has been a real joy of my week and of my day. We do often ask folks, and I did not prepare you for this at all, so it's totally okay if you don't have an answer. Back to our kind of last minute scheduling. Is there, if people are looking for some kind of a resource, a book, a podcast, just something, is there anything that either you use or that you point people to? No, with the understanding of multiple pathways, anything that you find useful that you share with others, that we try to keep a list as we go?
Just, I don't have one in particular, but like I always just say like, look up, like if you want to do a bicycle, support, see, there's other people. Like whatever you're looking for, there are other people that are also looking for that. So but like I always just try to go on like the Facebook pages. I don't have any specific book that like I can offer. I think it, especially in this area, it's ever changing, and we have new information like daily on supports. But like saying that you don't have the ability to get or receive support is like, that's a lie. We got to show you that you do. And it's just feeling confident enough to like walk through those doors. And so that's what
virtual door, right? Even if it's like COVID taught us that, like one of the guests, we had, we got him on a couple of times, Becky Cohen, a transgender male, and he talked about one of the blessings of COVID is he could now find a support group. He could find a meeting for other transgender males in recovery. He's like, I couldn't find that in my local community. And now I can find that, right? So you can find like actual doors and virtual doors, and you just need to keep trying things until they fit you.
Absolutely. And I think like, get active. Like if you have the ability to like get out there and get involved and you don't want to talk and you don't want to really feel like, because there's a lot of us that actually don't want to talk all the time about like how we're feeling. It's like, go to like the Phoenix gym, go like to a yoga, go to the YMCA, like something that allows you to get your body moving and out of your head. Like I think the solution a lot of times is just us getting out of our own head and like being around other people.
And there's more and more evidence about, depression, anxiety, and also, supporting long-term recovery is that movement as medicine, right?
Yes.
And because I think, yes, of course, it's healthy for your body, cardiovascular, muscle building, blah, 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 blah. But I think that there's a much bigger mind-body connection, and that when you are focused on doing something with your body, even if it's a slow walk, right? Like you're connected more, right, to yourself versus like whatever else is going on.
Yes. That's awesome. Like, and that's what I really took out of like just walking in the woods. It was like, we're in a world right now or today where it's like, I'm expected to be available at any given time of any given day. Like you can access me at any moment, and I need to stop everything that I'm doing just so I can answer whatever your needs are. And it's like, wait a minute, I cannot always everybody. I need to, be available for myself, and like walking in the woods and stopping and being like, wow, that's a really beautiful tree. Like I wasn't looking at trees when I was getting high, like, but if you really stop and looked at it, it's like, we're so small in such a larger picture that it's like, there's comfort in that too, where it's like, wait a minute, like, I'm not really that big of a deal. Let me get out of my head and appreciate like what's around me, because I'm really not that important. Life will go on. Look at this damn tree. It's been here for 5,000 years. Like, so, and it's like, it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. Like something as simple as going for a walk is helpful.
That's so fantastic. We could keep talking all day at that time. I'm grateful that you actually did answer the call when I called you and you weren't in the woods, because this has really been a great episode. I've really enjoyed meeting you. I've enjoyed having you on the podcast, and I look forward to having you back. Thank you so much, Keriann.
Thank you so much. And I'm grateful you asked me. If you ever need anything, you can reach out anytime, unless I'm in the woods. Then I probably won't answer.
Then I just have to wait, right? And that's okay. I can wait. For folks that are listening, thanks so much. This is the thing that Jesse's really better at, so I'm going to try to do it now. If you like this episode, you'd like to hear these powerful recovery stories and discussions on addiction, subscribe, share, all of those things. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much, Carrie.
Thank you. Bye.